uh, all kinds of AI deployments. So LangFuse is one of the tools that we looked at a lot for observability side of things for LLMs. So today the session is going to be about LangFuse, which is one of the leading tools that get used for having observability and traces within AI tools. So the good thing about LangFuse is it is there are two versions of it. There's the open source version that you can sort of host on your side, but also the free version you can sort of play around with it on their cloud. You can play around with it to a certain extent, and I think like highly recommend trying it out. So you can sort of figure out like how your sort of LLM model is working, how your tool is working, things like that. The third option is obviously a paid version, which sort of gives you the cloud version, hosted version from their side, but at the same time, it gives you the ability, like it has quite a few sort of perks with their paid version. So I think like we'll go into these details in a bit, but just want to set the setting for us to sort of figure out like what LangFuse is and like why you are sort of learning this. And as usual, like when I do these sessions, like I want to make this a discussion. So we'll have a session at the end for Q&A, but feel free to ask questions as we go, especially like in the chat, and I'll sort of stop in the middle to take any questions that you may have. And yeah, also feel free to raise your hand. I think if it is at a suitable point, I'll sort of pause and take that question. Otherwise, I'll take them at the middle or the end. So yeah. So the focus for today is like sort of looking into what LangFuse is. If you are coming from a software engineering background in any form, you would have heard about tracing, how you sort of use different tools like Grafana, like all kinds of observability and tracing tools that helps you to understand the health and the well-being of your software stack and figuring out if there are sort of issues. So logs and monitoring, things like CloudWatch if you're on AWS. So all of these things quite useful when it comes to sort of maintaining and managing your software. But when it comes to LLMs, it is slightly different. So there had to be this new set of tools that needs to get introduced to track um, the traces and observability of their AI tools. So I think LangFuse is one of the leading tools, and it sort of helps you to keep track of obviously the 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 inputs and output to LLM, but also apart from that, there's a lot more that you can do with it. You can do prompt management, you can do token tracing, the cost evaluation, things like that. So it's a all-in-one tool that helps you sort of understand how the AIs are behaving, how the tool is behaving. So we'll sort of look into that today. Um, so this is the agenda for today. I think so. The main thing is like, as I said earlier, understanding why LangFuse is important and why especially within LLM maps, why it's important. And we'll go into a couple of demos. One is like setting up like a normal chat example where you can set up traces very quickly and you can sort of see those traces within LangFuse cloud environment. The prompt management. So this is a really important piece where we talk about to manage prompts. Rather like it is very similar to like GitHub when it comes to managing prompts, but we sort of detached, separate code and prompts in a way so that you can manage them separately, and because both of them can have two different life cycles rather than like merging them together, which can be a bit sort of restrictive when it comes to developing software with AI. And then we'll sort of look at how to sort of store prompts, retrieve prompts, and at the end we'll have a sort of Q&A. So mostly like I want to make this a conversation as I said earlier. So feel free to ask questions. Really love to sort of have a discussion around these topics. Yeah. So let's going back to the first point I was making, like why LangFuse is important. I think the um, it's quite important if you deploy something to understand how that is behaving, so that because of that you need to have some sort of observability tool when apps and AI tools are in production. So this helps you to do that. And another sort of valuable value addition from LangFuse is like compared to other tools, like things like OpenAI, Evals, LangFuse is open source that you can sort of host it on your side. And it also helps you to track prompts. So what that means is like you don't have to store your prompts within code. You can store them within LangFuse side and load them when it's needed, and you can have their own versioning cycle. And because of that, it's quite helpful to so non-technical people to sort of do adjustments. So highly recommend because of that. Apart from that, obviously you can keep track of outputs, cost, and the latency, and you can also sort of keep track of if you have sort of quality evaluators like analysts who sort of keep track of data. They can add sort of information within the you can tag them certain specific traces, so you can do a lot within the system, which we'll go into detail in a bit. Apart from that, the having these kind of checks and balances helps you to sort of have reproducible, very so reliable sort of results from your tool. So because of that, you can do evaluations, you can do sort of traces back and forth to see how well your sort of tool is performing. So I think like I've sort of given quite a few reasons why we need something like LangFuse. Obviously, there are other options, but like this is one of the tools I like and love using. So yeah, so we'll sort of look into like how we can sort of implement this, right? So there are quite a few ways that you can do this. So LangFuse provides a SDK. So what that means is like you can sort of download a version of LangFuse, like a library, and you can sort of integrate that within your sort of tool set. And it's relatively easier sort of integration. So there are a couple of ways you can integrate this. For example, if you are seeing like OpenAI based sort of tools, um, like a chat application like this, you could sort of integrate it like this, where you um, import LangFuse or OpenAI, and from that you import OpenAI object. So you don't have to change any code afterwards because the LangFuse OpenAI object is a wrapper around the general OpenAI object, and you can sort of use it as the rest of the code. So you don't have to do any of the changes. So if you have like let's say OpenAI based like a massive code base, you just add this line at the top, and then you can easily track traces. So I'll go to example in a bit, but I want to like provide the setting like how you can do easily do this. There's another way that you can do this. Instead of using directly, you can use a language object, and within that you can call OpenAI endpoint. But that's another way of doing this. But I think this is much cleaner, and it also helps you keep the code base relatively detached from LangFuse, so you can sort of easily remove it if you need to do that. If you use the LangFuse object route, it's gonna like sort of get integrated in the code base a lot. So if you want to remove it, it takes a bit of time. So those are the two sort of main methods that you can sort of integrate LangFuse directly into your code base. So I think as I said, I'll show that in a bit in code, but rest of the code stays the same. Um, I think I mentioned like the the ability to manage prompts. So I think like this is something sort of evolved in the last 1.5 years time, prompt management, because in the past prompts and code used to be sticking together. The more you move towards production grade applications, it's always best to detach prompt and code. So in that way you can separately version code and separately version prompt. It also gives you the ability that like a non-technical non-programmer can update the prompts, and then that will directly be merged into production so that the prompts can be easily used. So I think that's the main sort of value add. And apart from that, um, y- because it's stored on LangFuse side, you can easily fetch from quite a few applications, not just your application. So it's a centralized way you can sort of manage prompts. So if it's a common prompt that will be used by different departments, different sort of different applications, you can easily sort of fetch that. So definitely that's one of the value additions, like why prompt management is important. And then like making apps reproducible and making it collaborative, as I mentioned earlier. So what that means is like um, you can always keep the prompt separate. So because of that, you don't have to sort of run into issues where because the code changes, the application changes, but now you understand, okay, if something breaks, it's because of a code change rather than a prompt change, so that you can do this test separately. So that's some of the value additions of having prompts and code separate. And I highly recommend, if it's like a production grade application, to think about ways to sort of manage prompts separately from your code base, and that will save a lot of trouble and make your sort of speed of development much faster. So this is an example on how you can sort of integrate um, prompt within your code base. So for example, what you need to do is like you need to first store your prompt with a name, let's say scientific analysis. So you can sort of load your prompt using this line. And after that, you can sort of compile this text using, if it has a variable, you can sort of use this text, like if you have a variable called text, you can sort of replace that variable within the prompt. I'll sort of show that in a bit, but I want to quickly go through like what this looks like. And then as usual, you sort of call this, and you have this the regular OpenAI call here, and you can sort of dynamically change the prompt based on the input here. So that's the value of this. So if, for example, if you have some sort of a system prompt that has a variable value within it, and you want to change that at runtime, you can easily do that with sort of prompt LangFuse prompt management tool. Yeah. And yeah, I think like just quickly set the setting on what we are going to do, and now we'll look at like what LangFuse looks like and like how it looks like in code, so that it will give you a better understanding how to use LangFuse. So if you go to LangFuse, so LangFuse, you can go to like cloud.langfuse.com. That's where you'll find the application. So I'll go from like Google itself. So if you go LangFuse, so you go here and you land on the website, and can go to this icon, which is called to app, which will direct you to the dashboard side of the LangFuse. This is like the generic website that they have, which is the consumer facing sort of UI, but this is the dashboard. So I've already logged in. If not, you can create a free account, and then you can create a project within that, and then um, can go into that. So this will sort of looks slightly complex if you haven't seen this before, but this is like a traditional sort of a UI that you'll see in a standard sort of tracing and observability tools. Sorry. And I want to like show some important components before I go into code. So this obviously this is like the home page, and you can see like different sort of model cost information, traces by time. As you can see, I've been sending up traces in the last hour or so, and then the cost per model. Like for all these cores, is a very small amount of cost that's been incurred by me in this test. And then you can also see the traces, the latency for those conversations, and different types of sort of charts that you may have. So you can also like I saw this right now, like you can request a chart, it seems like. So you can sort of submit a feature, because given that this is an open source project, you could sort of ask for different charts to be added, so they'll help you um, adding them and prioritizing them. So yeah, the really fast moving team there. So I think definitely you can sort of request certain things if you have the need for that. Um, I think the dashboard piece is where you will sort of see like different types of information. It's a bit more modularized, I would say, but those are also a few charts that you can look at. But I think the important section is tracing and prompts. So I think like I'll go into them right now. So if you go to tracing, um, they have sort of updated some of the features as well. But in general, you would have um, set of traces like this. So these are all the conversations I've had with the LLM I was playing around like a couple of hours ago, and you can see there's a timestamp, a name of the the interaction, and the input message, and I've asked it to tell me a poem. And then you have the latency. If there are token usage instruct, you can have that. And also metadata, like if you want to have different kinds of metadata, to be stored with that each interaction, so that you can search that information later. You can do that very easily. And you can have other columns as well, depending on how you configure the request. And if you take, sorry, if you take one of the traces, um, so trace can be consist of multiple observations, and you can see this is the trace and this observation, and this is like a one-to-one mapping here. So you can see there's this is the input that we provided to the LLM that's been stored, and we also have the reply that we got that's also been stored. So anybody can go and check this on the admin side to see how that's working, and also the types of information around, like the version of the LangFuse SDK, the public key that was used, also the information can be found, and the model type, temperature that was set, number of prompt sent and received, the cost, the environment that was used. We can have production, testing, etc., the latency of the call. So all that information can be found. So I think this is a really valuable sort of feature of this, that you understand if somebody is especially interacting with your tool, and you don't have time to sort of figure out how people are doing. So you can just deploy this and see like what sort of questions people ask. Obviously, making sure that you are within GDPR compliance and all types of privacy concerns, protection. So make sure to like do that. But if that is covered, this gives you so much leverage on how to like figure out like how the users are using the system. Yeah. Uh, Apart from this, this also extend us to sort of do a few more interaction with this platform. For example, you can annotate that. For example, if I'm an analyst who are reading through these traces and I want to add something like, okay, this is so discourse. So, so you can sort of create like different types of dimensions to score this information, right? So I previously created something called correctness, so I can sort of um, okay, yeah, so you can give a score for that, and it will be getting saved. So the correctness score is fine. I mean, it's just a random number. So if you later, if you want to search for this value, you can sort of sort it based on that. There's also the playground, and there's also add to datasets. Let me spend a bit of time on this too. This is quite important. Um, it's a really important aspect of LLM tools is that to have the right kind of eval systems. What that means is like having the right kind of input and output combinations that represent the problem that you're trying to resolve. So, for example, if you're trying to create an agent that can answer questions about specific, let's say, specific let's say a hotel, like, so it's a concierge service that sort of helps you answer questions about a hotel. So in that way, so we could have like very critical questions and the right answers that we're expecting, and we can create like a golden test set or the eval suit. So we can easily do this with these traces. So if we find like good example sets, we can add them to the data set. So if you, I'll show you how you do this. Go to add to data set, and you can sort of select the data set, which I have something called test. And as you can see, this is what looks like the input, where you have the role, the user, the input, LLM call, and then you have the output, LLM, the result that you get. And also there's metadata. You may or not use them, but you can store them as well. And you go ahead and enter data set. So this will move on to section here, datasets, and this what will help you create is a set of really good examples that you can use to benchmark your results. Like, so if you ever change your prompt, you can run this datasets against your prompt and see how well it's behaving for the updated prompt. So in that way, you can sort of figure out how what's the regression. It's like acting as a regression suit, so that if something goes wrong, you could sort of trace back and then figure it out. So that's the value of this. And also there's a playground. You go here, go to fresh playground. So you'll have the input and output, and you can sort of play around with it to see, sorry, this is a system message and the user message. This is the input, and then you can use that, and you can sort of configure other information like the OpenAI model if you need tool integration, like external services. And apart from that, you could have a schema. What that means is like you can define a specific structured output that you want the results to be returned. You can set that as well. And if you have other variable values that you need to add, you can add that as well. And then you just run this and you'll get a set of results back. I'm not sure if this will work. So yeah, I think I need to set the right OpenAI key on this side. And I haven't set that. So if you do that, you get an output here, and you can sort of do experiments with it. So that's the summary of this playground. It is quite useful if you're experimenting with a specific input trace. So if something gives you like a wrong answer, you can tweak a bit to see if you can get it working. So this is quite useful for non-technical managers who are trying to work around with prompts with an existing platform. You can do this on your own without disrupting the production environment. You don't have to disrupt the existing production development process. You can do it on your own. So you don't have to trouble anyone. You can test your prompts here. So that's the value of this tool. Um, so if I go back to yeah, think tracers, I think I covered a lot here. And there's observation, which is the many steps within a trace. So a trace is created of multiple steps. So that means your LLM call, chat completion, if you get a return value. So you have all of these in like combined result. And if you look at it, it might have multiple observations. So if you want to be a sec. Sorry. If you want to sort of um, look at like individual sort of observations, you can sort of go here. It is very similar to tracers. I mean, it's the same data, but it's much more granular. So you can check that as well. You can have more columns here as well. So you also have the annotation that we did, like the correctness score. You can find it here, and you can sort of use that to filter it based on the parameters. So I think if you go here. Yeah. So you got quite a few sort of parameters that you want to filter it here. So latency, you can set values, metadata, trace tag, prompt name. So you can filter these and find the required information very fast. So that's the value of this. And yeah, and other thing I want to show here is that the prompt management tool. So if you go here, so you can have all kinds of new prompts here. And if I go here, right, open this. So this is what the prompt management system looks like, right? So you have simple prompt here, and you can see this production label, this latest label, and if let's say I need to edit this, I say you are an expert research assistant with deep knowledge of multiple domains, but you are specialized in Western music. Let's say. Something like that, and then you can save this. This is becomes a new version of the prompt, and you can also um, set the label to production. So when you read the prompt from LangFuse side, you can just read using the name of the prompt, and it automatically pull the production label with the production prompt with the production label. So if you set it, it will become the latest prompt, and you can add a commit message. This is to update my prompt to uh, to know about Western music. Yeah, and save as new prompt version. So you have the latest version. So this is the old version, this is the latest version, and you can have the production label as well. So you can add more features, more versions on top of this, and you won't lose this. So you can trace back. For example, if I want to move this to production, I go here and I put the production label. And now this is the latest, but when you pull the prompt name research assistant underscore system prompt, you'll get this label. So you can sort of play around with it. So that's a value sort of add of this one. And then I want to show, I mean, playground we looked at before, which sort of gives you the space to run prompts and see how that sort of works out on an isolated sort of environment rather than sort of basing on the code itself. And then you have run experiments. So if I go here, so it's basically you can select a prompt and the version. So version 1 or 2, you select that. You would select the model type. This is not going to work for me because I haven't set the OpenAI sort of credentials, but we can go to the next stage. And you can select a dataset. So it's important to select. Yeah, so the reason that you don't see this is so it's expecting so it says I mean it's no issue there, but it's stating that it doesn't have any variable values. So for this case, it's fine because I think we are not in the test that we're running in the prompt is also not expecting any prompt, so that's fine. So because of that, we can leave it as it is and go to the next stage, and then you can select an evaluator. So evaluator is a concept called LLM-as-judge. So this is a broad topic, but the idea in simple terms is that you use another LLM to evaluate the results of the LLM. So what that means is like you will have the input and output, but rather than getting a human to evaluate this, you will have another prompt. So, excuse me, having a stuffy nose today. So, so you can sort of define certain uh, sort of LLM as a judge prompt to evaluate your results in a certain dimension. So in this case, we are asking to sort of evaluate it from a correctness point of view. We say for correctness. Yeah, and then you can add more evaluators if needed. Go to the next stage, and you name the prompt as it is, and go to the next, and then it's a summary page for you to check if the experiment that you're running is accurate, and then you run the experiment. So I think yeah, this is probably because I didn't have the keys to run this on this side, but this is how you sort of run this. And it will run, and eventually you'll see how well your prompt is behaving for the updated dataset. Updated prompt works against the dataset. So that's about running experiments, which is a separate topic as it is. And then you have LM as a judge, which is the concept I just talked about, which is if you look at this, um, this is what the system prompt looks like, which is another prompt actually. So you have the query that you get populated at runtime, you have the generation, which is the output, and the ground truth. You have reference point to compare this against generation to see whether it's correct or not. So as you can see, it's asking it to rate these results from 0 to 1, where 0 being like no match at all, 1 being really accurate. And then there are some examples provided for that it can sort of have some understanding what it's trying to do here. Uh, so there are more libraries like this, different kinds of prompts. You can add your own prompt if needed. So yeah. So that is about LLM as a judge, which is, as I said, it's a whole broad topic. We can have spend enough time on this, but the idea is to like give you a good understanding what LangFuse can do, and also the human annotation. I haven't used this much to be honest, but it is one of the tools that you can sort of separately annotate. But the annotation we showed while the traces are we're looking at the traces, we can annotate them, but there's separate section that if you want to annotate them. You can add them to a queue where by some annotator would come and check them and sort of mark them, add comments, etc. You can do that. And datasets we looked at, we already. So if you look at one of these runs, so this is like data set, and I've run like experiment before. So you'll have like so this latency, cost, and the correctness. You'll have some level of sort of a chart about how well your prompt update is doing against a specific data set. So you can have some benchmark to test against. See, so if you can see here, so it is the idea here is like in the past I've done this. So you have a, let me see if I can open it. So you have an input, so the expected output is neutral, and if you look at the run, let's see, yeah, so it is accurate. Like when you send this, we've got the expected results. So because of that, the weather today is okay, nothing special, so we're expecting it to be neutral. So this is a data set to test a sentiment analysis LLM that can classify whether a text is neutral, positive, or negative. So, and this is a data set that we use to test that. And if you look at this is the one. So yeah, I think it has been tested a couple of times, but yeah, I think it is always been correct for a positive one, and then there's a negative one that you can do. But yeah, this is the view with datasets and evaluations, which is a obviously relatively complex topic that we could spend a bit of time on this. But now I want to go back to show the demo I was talking about, and I'll go through the example and how it looks like on the tracing side. Um, so right now, this is the latest set of trace that we see. Like I've asked it to tell me a poem, and it has written me a poem. So if I go here, so I've built a very simple Streamlit application, and I've integrated LangFuse in the backend, and I'm gonna sort of have a conversation with it, say hi, and it also provides token usage because I've visualized that as well. Uh, could you summary of the sport basketball? It's a random question. Let's see if it can handle that. It's thinking. Um, So yeah, it sort of gave us some information about basketball. So I think the important thing is not about basketball. The important thing is about uh, looking at the traces, right? So to take a few seconds to get updated, but let's see if we can find that trace. So as you can see, we received the question I've asked, and then the output is here. So all that information here, you can keep track of that, and now you can sort of keep track and sort of maintain the data set, and anybody else can see it if it's working or not. So that's very easily, you can sort of have that on your side, and it's almost instant, and you can sort of find this information on your side. And this is the full LLM call. But yeah, I think the system message and the user message, etc. And if you go back to to the code, so which is this is the cursor editor that I'm using. So I've built a very simple Streamlit app for to run this. So for us to set up LangFuse, the uh, the main thing is to get the keys like the LangFuse secret key, public key, and the base URL. And obviously you need OpenAI key for if you're testing, and then you need to uh, sort of create so load this information. So this is like a Streamlit application, which is Python used for front end as well. And then as you can see, we are sort of loading LangFuse directly. And first we are sort of passing in the LangFuse secret key and public key base URL. So the value of base URL is that if you are using like a hosted version, you can set that URL path here, and then you can create object, and then you also create OpenAI client, and then you'll have both the information that you can sort of load. So here you create the LangFuse object and the OpenAI client that you can use within the system. And another important sort of method that I use here is create prompt. So in this case, this method, what it does is that it checks if it can get a prompt named chat system prompt. So if you go back to LangFuse side, in prompts, you have something called chat system prompt. It's a very simple prompt that has your helpful assistant, be concise and friendly. So this get pulled at runtime. So it first checks if it is there. If it is not, it will create that. So it will create something called chat system prompt, and you give that, and you add the label production to it, and you programmatically create this. And this is the simple chat UI, which is the standard ChatGPT style Streamlit based application. But if you go more carefully, so you start as trace basing this. So like you start observation, and then you have some information to sort of pass into the trace. So you have the trace, and then you get the prompt from LangFuse side, and then you compile it. So as I said earlier, the compile piece comes into play. So if your prompt needs to get dynamically changed, so you can pass in like a specific variable to the prompt and sort of change that using this compile. But right now we're not changing, we're just taking in the vanilla form, and then we are sort of using that as a system prompt. And then you sort of start this um, 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 the conversation from here, and then you can see like you get the results. So you have the system prompt, user message combined together, you make the LLM call, and then you get results back. And after that, so you like show on the front end what it looks like, and then you finish the trace, and then you like kill the object after it's done. And so yeah, that's a single run for us to sort of keep track how this looks like. And the rest of the code is around a Streamlit front end piece, but it's a relatively simple sort of setup for us to sort of run this. And if you scroll here, think give me a sec. Yeah, so if you start from here, so it's first try to sort of load the prompt. So create prompt, and then um, so if the prompt is available, you can sort of go ahead and create the session, and then you start the conversation, and you can sort of the traces would be getting passed on to the LangFuse side. So can be a bit confusing because it has the see the LLM, so the front end piece as well. So this one is a much simpler sort of version of that. But I mean, the idea is relatively the same. So you are sort of um, creating like an LLM call in the chat interface, and then it sort of pass that traces to LangFuse, and you can visualize them on this side on the traces. So you can sort of keep track of this. So this is like the quick and overview of what LangFuse does. I mean, it's a very broad topic, and you can spend like days and weeks on this. But the purpose of this session is to give you a sense of what you can use this for, and where you can sort of utilize this, and what sort of features are there. So I think hopefully this was quite helpful, and and to sort of come back to the slides. Um, yeah, I think like um, I want to spend a bit of time for the kind of the questions from you guys, if you have any. But just wrapping up from our quick session, the focus was basically so why sort of LangFuse is important, which is because of the prompt management, the tracing, and the evaluation piece, as I discussed. It also helps with like prompt reliability and app quality, because obviously if you can maintain prompts in a single place, that's gonna have the same prompt that you don't need like different versions of prompts in different places, and even the app quality is going to be really pristine, because it's a reliable way of like maintaining the application, whether it's AI based application, even software based application. And then you have the uh, reproducibility aspect, I would say, so that anybody can easily get the prompts and sort of run it on their side. You don't have to get the entire code base, and so that helps you with uh, the LangFuse help you with that. So yeah, I think this is the quick and dirty version of LangFuse, I would say. But I think I'll probably do like a bit longer version, going into much more details. And then, but I want to like stop here, and I want to like um, give you guys some few minutes to ask some questions so we can have a discussion. Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself or even use the chat to ask any question that you may have. There's a question, sorry, Eric. Does that support custom arbitrary judges? Yeah, yeah, definitely. You can sort of create. If we go to LangFuse, so set up an evaluator. You can create a custom evaluator, and then you can define what that evaluation looks like, um, and you can sort of can even get ChatGPT to write something for you, and start from there. And then you need to sort of have placeholders for the input and output, and also the ground truth variable, so that if you need to have that. But beyond that, you can sort of create something from scratch. Yeah. Even multi-step evaluators, for example, extract and then classify. Um, I think this was a limitation when I look back at LangFuse few months back. I don't know if they have done that already. Like if I did a playground, I think they haven't done that yet. So those kind of things, you have an API for LangFuse, you can sort of write something on your own. I think obviously this should be on their sort of timeline, but I think maybe it's very like a unique edge case for them right now to write something like this. I mean, when I was doing this, I had to like pull prompts and data sets from LangFuse and run a separate application to this do this chain evaluation. So I mean, it's a really good question, Eric. But I think they're not there yet, I think. Any other questions, guys? If you haven't seen this before, this can be a bit confusing. So, rather, how do agents learn from evaluation failures? I think this is a broad question. So I think like LangFuse doesn't have a feature like that, but it will track agents' behavior. So with different agents, different pathways it takes, you can track that. So you'll have like much more complex sort of traces. But I think it's the evaluation. Um, so I think it's more about agents. It's about for humans to like look at these failures and see like what needs to change in the prompt. And that's the best use case I've seen. Like self-correcting agents is probably not there yet, in my opinion. Obviously, people are experimenting with it, but it's like a sophisticated mechanism where agents correct themselves and like it can run for a very long period of time. I'm yet to see them. But yeah, I think it's mostly for humans to check results and like adjust prompts, adjust the wiring around the agent. I think that's the best use case, I would say. Does that answer your question, rather? Can we use version CI/CD? Yes, you can. You can. But you need to like sort of write some scripts to load. Like if you look at LangFuse API, so there's a API reference. Um, maybe this one. So you have quite a few APIs so that you can sort of get items, you can get data sets that you can run, you can get prompts. So all sort of things you can pull, and then you can run a CI/CD pipeline for sure. Yeah, I think apart from LangFuse, there's OpenEval, there was DeepEval I've used. There's another one. I think. I did some research on this before I did select LangFuse. Like this was like 6 months ago. There are like 10 to 15 good players out there, I would say. And I think like it boiled down to like something like between Open AI's evals and this one. And deep evals are not matured enough. I think at that point, maybe it is now. Like being a bit too harsh on that. Also has drawbacks, I'm not gonna lie, but it is what we have, like what's that's like the best version we can use at this point in time. Um, and you can write your own eval, so it's not something complex. I mean, it's a fancy UI, but the idea is like just some wrappers around other GPT endpoints, and you can sort of have like your own traces. It's not nothing complex, but obviously it's best somebody else do it. Otherwise, like it's a lot of maintenance because like the models change, the APIs change, so it's hard to keep up. So I think like using something like that seems like the best option. But yeah, I think like I'll try and find some more options. If I can find the research I've done, I think I should be able to share that. Yeah, so I have a rubric to evaluate this. Obviously, depending on the use case, it could be cost, and also look at like how easy is it to detach ourselves from this and go into something else. So LangFuse provides that it sort of flexibility to a certain extent. Obviously, if there's a cost and the flexibility around features, like what sort of features are there. So I create like there's a rubric. And I score all of it. I mean, I use like deep research to start off with, either Grok or Perplexity or even ChatGPT, and like let it like do a deep research run and do an evaluation on that. So that's gonna help me understand, like have a good understanding. And if there's something interesting, I go and dig deep manually and like update those ratings and then pick the top three and see like how that works out and play around with it and then sort of go with it. There's no perfect solution. I think you find the lesser evil, I guess, and then sort of stick with it. Amazing. Any other questions? I mean, obviously, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I always say this. So let me see if I can. Uh, I will share this in the chat. To connect with me on LinkedIn. If you have any questions around LangFuse or anything around AI, feel free to reach out. This is my bread and butter. This is what I sort of yeah think about every day. So if there's anything, if you have any recommendations for topic to discuss, happy to do that as well. So feel free to sort of connect with you. I just want to thank you everyone who joined today. Obviously, taking one of your time to joining is quite grateful for that.